In a previous video, I discussed a bunch of things, but I also want to discuss something about based on a few ideas I occurred. Um, so, um, imagine not having access to a really funny TV sitcom. It does seem awful to say that without television, one would not be able to entertain themselves, right? Because the TV sitcom is hilarious in many ways. Being able to have many forms of entertainment is very enjoyable. Um, but there's something said about um, what I consider as a topic that I remember reading a book called "Thou Shalt Not Think" by David Jack. Is the idea that came from from a researcher who just did research on I think mice or rats and discussed what happened when they were overfed. Now that's not entirely the important thing. The important thing is that there are different types of people in different places. There are different perspectives to be said. Um, what often is a frequent observation I occur is that perspectives are not understood, particularly by a certain type of person. Um, Often I see that this type of person needs to literally be in a different country. Even then, that's not going to happen. So, let's put it this way. There are many different migration patterns. And we're not discussing, and when I mentioned migration patterns in the previous video, I forgot to mention that I was not discussing immigration. I was discussing the idea that a soul is not going to reincarnate in a certain time period because they don't want to, right? They simply do not want to do those things because it is their choice. Um, it is their choice. Let's see. Um, Many different types of people. You got some of these ideas I got as you got the optimistic. You got someone who is um, kind, nice. You got people who are pessimistic. You got introverts. Got judger types. You got folks that use extrovert thinking, introvert feeling, extrovert intuition, introverted intuition, extroverted sensing, introverted sensing, right? And of course, you got a bunch of other things. But I'm not discussing psychology here. I'm giving the idea that there are many different reincarnation patterns. As Now the vast majority of souls reincarnate as the same gender over and over, right? Perhaps maybe 5 out of 100 souls will experiment the opposite gender if they continue in a planet that strictly uses two genders. I am not aware of the other planets or universes for different species. I'm not aware of that. This is the knowledge of astronomy that I do not have. I'm not able to discuss that. This is a brief video, and I want to say that the different aliens that exist, they come to Earth and they're very confused about a bunch of concepts. They're confused on, let's say they attend a school and they're confused on why things are the way they are. They're used to a certain way that's done. Maybe perhaps they still think that way is superior. They're very not able to express it as often because that is on the realm of science fiction books that some teachers are not familiar with, and some of their classmates are not familiar with, right? And then then the concept of reading a book comes to them, and they have to actually find that book. Usually they might not find it until their 20s, right? So there's the circumstance of the alien that incarnates, and this is their first incarnation on planet Earth in this timeline. This is their way of, they have to. So they're in their 20s, maybe they graduated college, or maybe they're about to graduate college, and they found that science fiction book that they were looking for that is the most similar to what they have some memories of. Some may have not been veiled. So they found that science fiction book that isn't very read. It doesn't have nearly as many people who've read it as the best-selling science fiction books. But they found that book and cling to it in their 30s, and perhaps they opt not to get married, or they opt to not continue some of their relationships, because that is a concept that they're used to having things done differently in a different planet, but on Earth is not done that way. So there's that. And of course, whatever the results are, some of them let's say some of them end up, with master's degrees and PhD programs. Some of them end up dropping out of college. Um, these aliens from all these different planets, there's many different of them. They're able to. It's In my experience, it's not the easiest to tell which ones are aliens and which ones aren't. But perhaps it's not really a topic I've seen on the internet. Some forms might have it, many forms don't. So it's not the easiest to describe this phenomenon. Just, uh, but that's the thing that makes this, makes the time period after 1970, when the advent of the internet was just, and these aliens proved to have made the society very different, has very different elements to this society. The presence of alien, though it's hard to say how much of them are there, because there's no research on this, on polling or statistics, but there's a lot. Their effect on society is certainly um, noticed, right? They certainly have a lasting effect. So, they might come across a history class they remembered from secondary school. Uh, Again, from their alien planet, things are different. So there's many concepts that they just seem foreign to them. And they might, you know, so as an alien, like, they're now, obviously, not all secondary schools have the topic of astronomy, so the closest that comes to them is physics and chemistry, right? To some extent, there are many different science classes. So, if they're in the United States, they may have taken an AP class, and who knows? Perhaps the more ambitious aliens might consider independent study in terms of self-studying AP tests, but that's not the majority. So, but they got, say some of them were ambitious enough and got admitted to the Ivy League schools or the top universities. In that case, some of them got themselves in some really impressive credential of extracurricular activities, and thus they're able to have their mark, I guess, on their. So they got, these aliens certainly show that they know their stuff. But again, when I mentioned a few minutes ago that maybe they didn't find that science fiction book into their 20s. So regardless of how they spent their teenage years, like there are many different alien planets, for instance. They might feel like that misunderstood person if they, in certain contexts. It's also difficult because, how are you gonna find someone else who was also from that exact planet? They let's say they knew. Let's say they took time and found out what it was. how are you gonna find someone else, who was from that planet? So yeah, that can be a little lonely in that for that in their case.